Welcome to the Alaska Weather Show on this Sunday, August 14th, 2022. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, coming to you from the National Weather Service through a unique partnership with Alaska Public Media. And if you'd like additional weather information on top of what I provide in this broadcast, you can go to weather.gov. That is the National Weather Service online presence. It'll bring you up to a map of the continental U.S. with Hawaii and Alaska to the lower left. And if you point and click on that particular map, you will be able to pull up forecast, watches, warnings, advisories for anywhere in the country, a good way to check up on family and friends. And on this Sunday afternoon, we have heat advisories for areas of the lower southern plains. Also, flood watches, particularly for flash flooding across, potential for flash flooding from southwestern Wyoming all the way down across areas of Utah into western Arizona. And then we also have excessive heat watches for the Sacramento Valley there, the big valley of California, as well as areas of eastern Washington state and pockets there in Arizona and eastern portions of California. Here in Alaska, though, we continue to have elevated surf along areas of the northwest and west coast through Monday, from around Point Hope southward, north side of the Seward Peninsula through the Bering Strait, and even down toward the lower Yukon Delta. Brisk north-northwest winds gusting at times over 30 miles an hour would cause the surf to be about a foot or so above normal. Upper level lows are going to impact the state here early and midweek. We have one that's going to be dropping down from the Arctic Ocean and Chukchi Sea and working its way down along the west side of the state. Another that's going to set up in the North Pacific, south of the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island, and then pivot moisture back on up across the Gulf Coast here, especially for midweek. That's going to enhance the rainfall. So overall, this wet and somewhat cool August pattern will continue in the week ahead, though we might see a little bit of a change coming up here toward the end of the month. Looking at some FAA webcams, Shishimar there along the north side of the Seward Peninsula, north-northwest winds 25 miles an hour, gusting up to 35 miles an hour with 45 degrees, creating that elevated surf. Also Hooper Bay, north-northwest winds at times gusting up over 30 to 35 miles an hour, temperature there 48. And again, some higher surf will be possible overnight and into the day on Monday. For areas of the Gulf Coast, Seward is seeing rain and fog today, 54 degrees. Yakutat, light rain and fog, and 55, the puddles there near the airstrip. And overall, we're going to see an enhancement in the rain along the Gulf Coast, especially as we go through Tuesday and into midweek Wednesday, Thursday. Just want to mention no advisories, watches, or warnings at this time, but I did highlight the areas along the west coast from Point Hope down through Kotzebue Sound and along the west side of the Seward Peninsula that will experience some elevated surf on the order of a foot to a foot and a half above normal, with those gusty north-northwest winds continuing into Monday. Precipitation forecast Monday, still scattered showers inland, could even be an isolated rumble of thunder along the Alcan border. Still some decent rainfall, light to moderate rains continuing the west side of Prince William Sound and the east side of the Kenai Peninsula. Notice the enhancement coming on Tuesday across the Gulf as more moisture streams northward in association with, as that low along the west side of the state drops southward across the east side of the Bering Sea, it's going to help the other low that's down in the North Pacific fling another round of moisture there along the Gulf Coast. Fire danger, still pockets of high to very high there in parts of the Yukon Flats and mid-upper Tanana Valley. But overall, the fire danger has come down tremendously across the state, effectively ending the bulk of the fire weather season. And looking at satellite imagery, we have one disturbance that's lifting northward through Yakutat and on up into the southeast interior along the Alcan border. Another one, we have low pressure circulation just over the southwest around Bristol Bay, and then there'll be another low dropping southeastward from out of the Arctic Ocean, Chukchi Sea, as we go into tomorrow. So this afternoon, there's that low that sits over Bristol Bay, a surface low. Another surface low up there, the Yukon Flats. Scattered showers, isolated storms. And another low sitting down in the North Pacific. That's going to be the one that, when it interacts with the upper level energy coming down the west side of the state and the eastern Bering, that's going to eventually pull up another round of moisture along the Gulf Coast by the time we get into Tuesday. Later tonight, early on Monday morning, kind of a stationary front. There is cooler air working its way down along the west side of the state, especially through the Bering Strait. But that's not going to make a lot of inroads southeastward. It's going to kind of pull back out toward the central Bering here as we get to Tuesday and Wednesday. But here's a reflection at the surface of that upper level energy coming down. We have a low that'll be just southwest of St. Lawrence out over the north central Bering on Monday afternoon as that next low begins to pivot moisture northward out of the North Pacific up into the lower Gulf interface. And by Tuesday, we'll see that frontal band pushing around another pretty good surge of moisture and rain up along the Gulf Coast by Tuesday afternoon. And that'll keep the rains going there for Wednesday and Thursday. So temperatures tonight generally across the Panhandle, low mid-50s, upper 40s, lower 50s across the Gulf Coast and up into South Central. Temperatures tomorrow could see some lower mid-60s in the Panhandle. Still a bit on the cool side, upper 50s to lower 60s South Central. And again, temperatures Tuesday morning generally in the 50s for the Panhandle, upper 40s to lower 50s South Central, with Tuesday afternoon highs, perhaps mid-60s across the southern Panhandle, and a few readings back up a little bit above 60 there in through areas of South Central interior. But we're not looking for any real warm temperatures as the cloud cover and rain will continue. Further north, temperatures are going to be in the 30s across the North Slope, Arctic coast, and even showing up west side of the Seward Peninsula. Still some upper 40s to near 50, say Yukon Flats and including Fairbanks. Temperatures Monday will be warmest there, east central Fairbanks 66, 68, perhaps there at Eagle, and even Yukon Flats may flirt with 70. Tuesday morning lows generally in the 30s there across much of the northwestern quarter of the state, especially North Slope and Arctic coast. And then temperatures on Tuesday afternoon, 60s to near 70 there, east central areas, including Eagle down toward Northway. And temperatures should generally remain in the 40s, lower to mid 40s along the Arctic coast, and mid upper 40s there, Seward Peninsula. Areas of the southwest Monday morning will be coolest there in the lower Yukon Delta near 40. Otherwise, in through the interior, I think lower mid 40s, and then across the Alaska Peninsula into the Aleutian Chain, upper 40s. Temperatures Monday afternoon will generally be confined to the upper 40s along the Norton Sound, but lower 50s for the interior there at Aniak and Bethel, and maybe perhaps near 60 Dillingham, King Salmon. And Tuesday morning lows across much of the region near 40 to mid 40s. And then for Tuesday afternoon, temperatures remain primarily lower 50s across much of the southwest interior, perhaps near 60 there as we get toward King Salmon, and generally in the 50s as we extend southwestward across the Alaska Peninsula out into the Aleutians. And looking at the temperature outlook, this is the 6 to 10 day, August 20th through the 24th. Temperatures are going to average near normal across the interior mainland, slightly above normal in the southern Panhandle, a bit below normal with the cloud cover and rain across areas of the Gulf. And looking ahead, though, beyond the 20th, as we get toward the 22nd through the 28th, toward the end of the month, temperatures may end up averaging a bit above normal across the interior as we go here toward the last full week of August. And checking on precipitation outlook for August 20th through the 24th, we are anticipating precipitation to average a bit above normal in the east and southeast interior along the Alcan border and up through the northern and central Panhandle. A little bit below normal across the west side of the state through the mainland and Alaska Peninsula. And then August 22nd through the 28th, near normal precipitation in the west and southwest, but perhaps a little above normal precipitation there, central eastern areas along the Alcan border and down across portions of the Panhandle. We're not looking at necessarily heavy rainfall, but a continuation of a little above normal precip.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Let's check out your aviation weather now. If you have a flight planned early this week, Monday or on Tuesday, we're going to be watching two mid and upper level low pressure systems. One of them is currently situated over the southwest, and it's going to sink southeastward into the North Pacific south of the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island. Another one is going to be dropping southward across the Chukchi Sea along the west side of the state. And that energy is eventually going to force more moisture to ride northward up through the Gulf. And as a result, we're going to see a renewal of coastal rains, especially from the eastern Kenai across the Panhandle as we get toward midweek. So in the meantime, we expect widespread IFR conditions out over areas of the Gulf, northwestern, north central Gulf Coast back into the southwest, as well as along the Brooks Range, North Slope, and Arctic Coast Monday morning. Monday afternoon could be an isolated rumble of thunder up there in the northeastern end there of the Yukon Flats toward the Alcan border. Otherwise, IFR along the Arctic coast and areas of the North Slope, as well as back down Prince William Sound out over into the western central Gulf and areas out over the central Bering around St. Matthew. And then for Tuesday morning, widespread IFR conditions across much of the Gulf Coast, especially pushing back into the Panhandle. And we also see IFR conditions continuing along the Brooks Range on up into the North Slope and Arctic Coast, as well as nudging into the southwest, the lower YK deltas. And for Tuesday afternoon, IFR conditions continue along the Arctic Coast and North Slope. We continue to see areas of IFR up there through the lower Yukon and Kuskokwim basins, as well as extending out across the Aleutian chain and back out through the Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound, even toward Kodiak and much of the Gulf. Anaktuvik Pass will generally see IFR conditions there Monday morning, giving way to MVFR conditions. Same thing at Adigan Pass, IFR certainly through the morning, giving way to MVFR conditions, though IFR conditions will likely return there for Monday night into Tuesday morning. Lake Clark and Merrill, generally IFR conditions early in the day, giving way to marginal visual flight rules. Rainy Pass, IFR becoming MVFR. Windy Pass should manage to hold on to generally MVFR conditions on Monday. Further east, Isabel may see those MVFR conditions early in the day give way to VFR. And Mentasta also MVFR conditions in the morning giving way to VFR. Tanita Pass is expected to hold on to MVFR conditions and further south and west there. Portage Pass is kind of a split. The eastern half of the pass will remain IFR, especially there out over Prince William Sound, but could see MVFR conditions there along the west end, especially there around the west entrance. Chilkoot and White will see MVFR conditions Monday morning giving way to VFR conditions, but the overall trend here as we go into Tuesday and Wednesday will be IFR conditions returning to much of the Panhandle and Gulf Coast. Freezing levels have come down in the Bering Strait area, aloft freezing levels to 2,000 feet. The cooler air pushing further south, associated with one of those upper level lows there out toward the southeast Bering and Alaska Peninsula. Still freezing levels up around 8,000 feet along the Alcan border. And the greatest threat for icing will exist along the Gulf Coast, 10,000 feet to a flight level of 18,000 feet. Also could be an area of some convection. So we could see some moderate icing between 12,000 feet and a flight level 18,000 feet along the Alcan border. Area above 5,000 feet where there's some snow or a mix of rain and snow there along the North Slope, Arctic Coast, Utqiagvik, and then also back out there along St. Lawrence Island westward above 7,000 feet. Upper level jet stream winds 30,000 feet. There is a northerly jet core out over the central Bering up to 110 knots. But we have those two circulations of upper level low pressure in the northwest and then south of the Alaska Peninsula. At 700 millibars, 9,000 feet, we have the circulation there in the northwest with the other one well south of Kodiak Island. And then as we bring it down to 3,000 feet, we have a few different circulations. One there up over the central Brooks Range North Slope. Another one, energy diving southeastward along the west side of the state and the eastern Bering, and then another down there in the North Pacific, just southwest of the Gulf. In turbulence, we could see some moderate turbulence along areas of the northwest coast, surface to 3,000 feet, and then further west, the western Aleutians, surface to 3,000 feet, and then finally the eastern Aleutians and the tip of the Alaska Peninsula, surface to 4,000 feet. So if you are able to get off the ground, have yourself a safe flight early this week.
welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder, and joining us once again is Eric Stevens, our good friend from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska, based up at UAF. And thanks for joining us, Eric. Really appreciate it.
Oh, happy to be here, Dave.
And we love to hear about all the fascinating developments, new and old, and how we're using the tools here, especially around Alaska. And I've got to think that, satellite meteorology right now is a fascinating time to be involved in. If we go back to the first satellite, Tyros, back in 1960, I think is when we got some of those first pictures. Weather and meteorology probably changed that day for a whole lot of people, and it's still changing today, right?
Oh, you know it. Satellite imagery is so important, and it's getting better all the time. Yeah. Of course, never perfect, but especially for us in Alaska, where there are other data sets like radars and weather balloons are so thinly spread. Right. The satellite is the great equalizer because the satellite sees everything.
Right.
Yeah. Right. We've got one particular issue in volcanic ash detection.
That's a big deal here. Yeah.
You know it. If you fly an airplane into volcanic ash, your jet engine might just fail. And an airplane without engines is in a world of hurt. Sure. So if there's a volcano that goes off, satellite imagery is the way to track that plume of ash and to tell pilots this is where you need to not be to avoid this ash plume. And there's a phrase out there, what's the difference? What's the difference?
Okay.
Well, it turns out, what we're going to discuss today, that the difference is everything. There's a technique called channel differencing.
Okay.
That if you take one piece of the spectrum of what the satellite detects and a slightly different wavelength of that spectrum, even though those two images might look similar, magical things happen when you subtract one from the other. And they reveal information that was already there, but it was hard to find until you did that subtraction.
That sounds like Nicolas Cage in National Treasure when he's got those fancy glasses and he's flipping one up and back and forth. I mean, is this what we're talking about?
Well, let's go more highbrow and talk Michelangelo.
Oh,
so apparently Michelangelo made some amazing sculpture and someone said, Michael, that's amazing. How did you do it? And Michelangelo's reply allegedly was, well, in that rock, the statue was already in there.
Right.
I just scraped away the unnecessary bits. In satellite meteorology, sometimes there are meteorological features that are in the data, but you can't see it until you combine or difference some of the channels.
Okay.
And we've got a case, good old Pavlov volcano goes off now and then.
Sure.
And you can observe directly a picture of the volcano. Just take it with your iPhone. You can see a volcano going off.
Yep.
Right. But if you want to get the broad view, we need satellite to do that. Now, there are a couple of wavelengths that we can look at. So what's a wavelength? That's the amount of space between a peak and a valley and another peak in a certain part of the electromagnetic spectrum. We're going to look at 12 micron wavelength and 10.8 micron wavelength.
What is a micron?
So what's a micron? Yeah, we're getting into the geek department now. A micron is a unit of length, and it is quite tiny. We're looking at what's called long wave wavelengths.
Okay.
But it takes 25,000 of these microns to make an inch. A human blood cell is about 5 microns across. So when we're talking about 12 micron imagery as allegedly long wave, well, that's relative.
Pretty short for light.
Yeah, it's other part of the, it's just an expression for the spectrum there.
Okay.
So we can look at a 12 micron image, say a satellite image. At 12 microns, we're seeing a heat signature here, really, and the way this color enhancement works is the yellow and the red stuff is high cold clouds down here over the Gulf of Alaska into South Central. And if you were asked, where do you find the volcanic ash plume in this image?
Hey, where do you find the volcanic plume in this image?
It's hard to do. I'm not sure I could find it. If you were to look at this image and just say, show me what jumps out at you here, I'd say, well, nothing really. Well, let's look. So 12 micron doesn't help us. Let's look at 10.8 microns.
All right.
All right, look at that. It's practically the same image. So where's this volcanic ash? Can't find it at 12 microns, can't really see it at 10.8, but when we subtract one channel from the other, magically the plume appears. The color enhancement here highlights the ash in blue.
Wow.
The information was already there, but we couldn't find it until we subtracted one channel from another.
Very interesting.
It's almost magical. Similarly, let's say you're looking for fog up on the North Slope. It's kind of a foggy neighborhood.
Sure.
In 11 micron and 3.9 micron, we've got a 3.9 micron image here. it's a big fuzzy blur over Barrow. We can't see where the fog is. But the information is lurking in there waiting for us to reveal it. All we have to do is find that difference between the 11 micron and the 3.9, and then this image becomes this image, and the fog bank jumps right out, and you can see it up there at Barrow. Now, you got to choose the right tool for the job.
Sure.
Like they say, you open your toolbox, all kinds of stuff in there. What do we need for this particular task? If you want to find volcanic ash, we look at 12 and 10.8 micron, find that difference. If you want to find fog, we'll look at 11 and 3.9 micron, find that difference. It's great, different tools for different jobs. Of course, there's always caveats and gotchas, but this fog procedure, it only works at night, because when the sun comes up, it gets in the way. So every product has its strengths and limitations, and in meteorology, the challenge is using the right tool for the right job, and these are some of those tools.
And discovery is still happening, even with meteorology. The weather's been around for a long time, but the tools that are being developed to understand the meteorology is fascinating and still very new science.
It's such a young science. We've come so far. I'm getting old enough now that I can literally say that, when I was a boy, we didn't have this kind of thing. And there's new things happening all the time. New satellites will be launched in coming years that will have better instruments than ever before. It's an exciting time, and this is so helpful for Alaska because satellites help fill in the gaps between other ways of observing the weather. Satellites, the great equalizer for Alaska.
Yeah, and help so many people stay safe in so many ways every day up here in the last frontier.
Yeah, that's what it's all about, protecting lives and property.
Well, thank you so much for joining us again, Eric. We love to hear about this fascinating information, and boy, it just makes me want to go watch satellite pictures all day. So hopefully we're inspiring more people to do the same thing and just be curious. It's a wonderful thing. Thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts, and we'll see you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back to the show, and we conclude things with the marine weather segment, starting with the sea ice edge. And the ice continues to slowly melt there along the Arctic coast. Notable ice is pretty much well offshore. We still have some ice close to the Russian coastline that happens to just be on south there of the Bering Strait. And overall, we anticipate the ice just to continue to slowly melt here through the late summer period. For Monday's marine forecast, the Panhandle region will see the inner channel southeast winds around 15 knots, waves 2 to 3 feet. The outer coast of the Gulf, winds will be generally southeast to south around 20 knots with waves 5 to 6 feet. By Tuesday, a frontal band will be approaching and causing winds to be gale force to 35 knots there along the outer coast from the southeast to east, with waves running 12 to 14 feet for the inner channels. Winds will be southeasterly around 15 knots, Petersburg up through Juneau, Lynn Canal, waves 3 feet, but 25 knots from the southeast, impacting Ketchikan, Metlakatla around Dixon Entrance with 5-foot waves. For the northwestern Gulf, winds will be easterly in Prince William Sound, 15 knots, waves a couple of feet. Generally off the Kenai, east winds 15 knots, waves 3 to 4 feet, and then variable winds around 10 knots along the length of Cook Inlet with waves generally running a couple of feet. For Tuesday, winds will be a bit stronger there south of Cordova in the northwest corner of the Gulf, 30 to 35 knot gales, waves 10 to 14 feet. East winds Prince William Sound, 20 knots, waves 4 feet. And then as we go down along, Cook Inlet winds will be northeast to north at 15 to 20 knots before they turn northwesterly there at the entrance of Cook Inlet with waves 4 to as high as 5 to 6 feet at the entrance. Across the Alaska Peninsula and in through Kodiak Island, winds will generally be out of the north-northwest. 15 knots through Shelikof Strait, northeasterly winds, 4-foot waves, but turning north to northwest as we go out the length of the peninsula, and some gusts at 40 knots possible off of Sandpoint with 25 knot northwesterly winds and waves around 5 feet. On Tuesday, winds will be generally out of the northwest to west at 15 to 20 knots, waves 5 to 7 feet on the North Pacific side, and then a few feet there in Bristol Bay, variable winds 10 knots with a few foot waves there north of Cold Bay. Across the eastern Aleutians on Monday, winds will be northerly around 20 knots, waves as high as 5 to 7 feet there on the Bering side, as well as on the North Pacific side, with some gust to 40 knots possible south of Unalaska. And then areas of the central Aleutians, look for westerly or variable winds, 10 knots, waves 4 feet, turning southerly west of Adak at 20 to 25 knots. On Tuesday, winds will be out of the south-southeast in the far eastern Aleutians at 25 knots, turning southwest to west to 30 knots from Nikolsky westward through the central Aleutians. Waves running around 8 feet on the North Pacific side and 6 to 7 feet on the Bering side. And then along the west coast, St. Paul, St. George, south of Nunavik Islands, look for north-northwest winds 15 to 20 knots, waves around 5 to 6 feet. Winds will be southwesterly west of Nunavik Island, St. Matthew, 15 to 20 knots, and winds will be still northerly in Norton Sound around 20 knots with waves there of 4 feet. On Tuesday, overall, the winds there out of Norton Sound northeasterly 25 knots, and then 25 to 30 knots out of the northeast as you get south of St. Lawrence and in north and west of Nunavik Island. Waves 7 to 11 feet there over the eastern and central Bering. And then across the Arctic coastline, northeast winds 15 to 20 knots, waves 3 to 4 feet, accelerating 20 to 25 knots down through the lower Bering with waves of 4 to 6 feet, especially there as you get down toward the north side of St. Lawrence Island. And on Tuesday, winds will be westerly 10 to 15 knots, Prudhoe Bay through Kaktovik. But look for northeast to northerly winds through the lower Chukchi Sea, picking up to 25 knots, passing through the Bering Strait and accelerating to 30 knots with waves there 6 to 7 feet. And recapping the synoptic maps, we have a piece of energy, surface low working its way south-southwest there of St. Lawrence. Low out over the lower Gulf, North Pacific. That is going to strengthen the winds across the Panhandle on Tuesday, as well as up into the north-central Gulf to 35-knot gales associated with that frontal band, along with some moderate to locally heavier rains along the Gulf Coast. So that wraps up the show for this Sunday evening. Thank you for joining me, and be sure to watch again. Come with Dave Percy here on Monday.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.